Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are out there in this world. It's time to step out onto the high wire. I don't know if you can feel it. I can feel it. There seems to be a sense of America is fed up. We've had it. In fact, you could probably even argue around the world, everybody has hit their breaking point. I don't know if it's because spring is right around the corner, it's starting to warm up in places, the sun is coming out, and we're looking through our glass prisons inside of our homes but from behind our masks and starting to ask ourselves, when is this going to end and what exactly are we waiting for? I think nothing really pushed people over the edge more than this video. In fact, there were several videos. I want to say that Tony Fauci appeared multiple times over the last week making statements that aren't just making the people that are vaccine hesitant or are saying they will never get the vaccine. It's not just making them upset. Actually, pro-vaxxers are getting really pissed off because of what he's saying. I don't know if it's completely sinking in, but this is what it sounded like that started the firestorm this week.
There are things, even if you're vaccinated, that you're not going to be able to do in society. For example, indoor dining, theaters, places where people congregate. At this point in time, it is unclear whether when you get vaccinated and you might be protected from clinical disease, which is the primary endpoint of the vaccine studies, that you could conceivably be infected, have virus in your nasopharynx, and at that same time have no symptoms, which is the reason why we recommend and say you still need to wear a mask. Because if you do have virus in your nasopharynx, even though we hope that when the data comes in, it's going to show that the very virus level is quite low and you're not transmitting it, we don't know that now. And for that reason, we want to make sure that people continue to wear masks despite the fact that they're vaccinated.
So for all the people out there that have been waiting for this vaccine to save the day and bring this pandemic to an end, they are now completely shocked, upset, frustrated, pissed off, even though we have been trying to explain this for like almost 12 months here on the Highwire. I have been showing you the vaccine trials from the beginning, telling you it doesn't look like this thing stops infection, and we have made it perfectly clear that the endpoints of that trial never set out to even show that the vaccine could stop infection or transmission. Therefore, it would be useless to ending this pandemic or getting us to herd immunity. But I want to point out some of the power pro-vaxxers that have been out there that are really starting to get, visibly pissed off. Let's go to Meghan McCain just to prove what an anti-vaxxer what a anti-vaxxer she is. This is her tweet. Take a look at this tweet just recently. She said, "To say I have no time or patience for anti-vaxxers is putting it lightly. It is dangerous, arrogant, and puts children at risk. Explain your bullshit to a terminally ill child fighting cancer and their family who has been exposed to the measles while suffering." I will say that's the first time I've ever said that word on the show. Sorry to you parents that have your kids watching this. Sorry kids out there that are using this as your homeschooling class. But that's actually what Meghan McCain wrote. So clearly, she is pro-vaccine. Well, look at how she's responding to these statements made by Tony Fauci this week. This is her on The View.
I was very frustrated when I saw this clip. I first and foremost want to say that I respect the great tragedy and all the pain that has come of our handling of the coronavirus. That being said, next week it will be a year since we left studio. And I have been very responsible in many different ways, as so many Americans have been. And the fact that Dr. Fauci is going on CNN and he can't tell me that if I get the vaccine, if I'll be able to have dinner with my family or dinner with, I don't have any grandparents left, but, older people. The idea that I can get vaccinated and I won't be able to see friends and nothing in life changes and that we're going to have to wear masks forever, it's terribly inconsistent messaging, and it continues to be inconsistent messaging. I want to get it. If you call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, I will go any place at any time to get it. I want to be responsible and obviously wait my turn, but this rollout has been a disaster, and I understand obviously President Trump can take much of the blame, but now we're in the Biden administration. I'm over Dr. Fauci. I think we need to have more people giving more opinions, and I honestly, quite frankly, I think the Biden administration should remove him and put someone else in place that maybe does understand science.
Great idea. I think it has been, time to replace Fauci for a very long time. But Megan, since your tweet did ask us to explain our bull, whatever it is, that's all I do on the Highwire. I've been explaining this to you, and you clearly, though you said you've done your due diligence, you're really trying to be a good citizen, you aren't doing your job as a journalist. It's really easy. So if you hold on for a couple minutes, Megan, I'm going to show you what Fauci's trying to explain that you obviously still don't get, and you could have read the moment the trials came out. But next, let's go to Ben Shapiro, who's been extremely pro-vaccine. He puts down anti-vaxxers all the time. My understanding is his wife is either a pediatrician or some form of a doctor that really believes in vaccines. Here's how frustrated he's getting.
Dr. Fauci is suggesting maybe we should wear masks into 2022. I have an answer for you, Dr. Fauci. No. The answer is no. Once we're vaccinated, we're not wearing masks. And guess what? We're not socially distancing. We're going back to ball games. We're going back to regular life. We're eating indoors, and we're eating relatively close to one another. Because we can't live like this. People were not meant to live like this. And this is what Dr. Fauci is saying. He keeps saying this kind of crap over and over. He needs to be fired. He's bad at this job. He's bad at this job.
Ben, you're right. He is bad at his job, but you're kind of bad at your job too, because you too still don't understand the problem with this vaccine. It's not sinking in. Why can't you go to a movie theater, Ben? Why can't you go to a restaurant? You're going to do it anyway. Even after you get vaccine, that's it. Masks are off. I'm sitting next to people. We're getting on with our lives. I'm going to explain it here in a second, Ben. Hang on. But before we get there, how about Joe Rogan? Joe Rogan's had like every pro-vaccine scientist on the planet on his show. Whether it's Peter Hotez or all of the other people that are parading around to be pro-vaccine and tell us how great the vaccine is, he leads them through explaining how awesome vaccines are. Joe Rogan, by the way, still refuses to allow me on the show. Joe, I'll come on anytime. I'll debate this with you anytime. You're a really smart guy. Try and tell me that anything I've said is misinformation. Oh, and by the way, he's denied Robert Kennedy Jr., Sherry Tenpenny, and everybody else to be perfectly willing to come on his show. But even though he's bringing up pro-vaxxers, he is a pretty smart guy because they're not winning him over. This is what he had to say just over a week ago.
You taking that vaccine?
No.
Yeah.
No, I would if I felt like I needed it. But I just feel like if you maintain your health, and I think for some people it's important. I think for some people it's good.
Are they gonna make people take it in order to go overseas?
I'm worried about that. I don't like that.
I don't like needles. I want to know how people fare over X amount of months. Like what happens in 6 months after the vaccine? How long does it last for? Do you need it again next year?
Really good questions, Joe. We actually have some answers on that. You've never asked those questions about the childhood vaccines. How long did we study? How long did it last? What did it do to overall health? Those are all things we've covered here on the Highwire. But Joe, I'm glad that your brain is working. I actually think when I watch that Joe Rogan does have a sense of antibody-dependent enhancement. I think he's concerned, like I am, that this vaccine could end up getting people killed in the future when they come in contact with the virus. But we'll have to wait to see what happens there. But Joe, pro-vaccine as he can be most of the time, he is saying, no way, I'm not getting it. I want to wait, which is amazing because it sounded almost exactly like the guy that's running one of the biggest social media platforms in the world said something very similar. This is what smart people say when they don't recognize that their answer is going to go out to the world. Let's take a look at what we played this last week. Here's what Zuckerberg had to say.
I do just want to make sure that I share some caution on this because we just don't know the long-term side effects of basically modifying people's DNA and RNA to directly encode in a person's DNA and RNA, basically the ability to produce those antibodies, and whether that causes other mutations or other risks downstream.
All the more reason why we should have long-term safety studies. Why you don't release a vaccine on an emergency use authorization only to say, like Fauci's having to say, well, we don't have enough data to really know. You should have enough data. You should have answered these questions before innocent people line themselves up. And I'm glad Joe Rogan's smart enough to not get it. And I'm guessing Mark Zuckerberg hasn't gone near it either. But how about the millions of people that are? What's going to happen to them? Are they not smart enough? Who's lying to them? Well, mostly everybody that's being allowed to talk on Facebook and most of the people you're bringing on your show, Joe. They all believed that you were going to get it. Now they're shocked and they're surprised. Here's another surprising person. Now, it sounds like they may not be as pro-vaccine, certainly not flu shots and COVID shots as they should be, but listen to Wendy Williams getting grilled by Dr. Oz. Take a look at this.
Are you planning on getting your vaccine?
No.
No.
No. I don't trust it. I've never had the flu. I'm not getting a flu shot. I very rarely get a cold. I never have headaches. I don't take an aspirin because I feel my heart murmur or something like that. I'm not getting, no, I don't trust it. There, I said it. I don't trust it. You doctors, you talk a lot of hocus pocus to me. And I go home and I think about it. And then I come up with my own decision because only I know ultimately what's best for me, unless you can show me the proof. You know what I mean?
What you say and believe is so important to a lot of people. I mean, millions and millions of Americans are going to say, Wendy Williams didn't get a vaccine, so I don't want to get a vaccine. So let me just ask you, if there's anything that could happen that would make you feel comfortable, 10 million people get vaccinated without a problem. Your neighbor gets vaccinated, a sibling, your son gets vaccinated, someone that's dear to you gets vaccinated and does well, that might make you think, you know, just to get past the hassle of having to lie on my back, recovering from COVID-19, or maybe not recovering, is not worth the risk, that I might actually consider this vaccine.
Doctors are really smart people, but doctors don't know everything. And that's been proven as well. I'm not getting the vaccine.
Boom! Couldn't agree with you more, Wendy. Yeah, doctors are pretty smart people. They don't get it right a lot of the time. We're going to get deeper and deeper into that in the show coming up. But here's the point I want to make. I think Wendy Williams, you know, she's saying, I don't get the flu shot. I see people getting sick all the time. Flu shots never worked. This doesn't look like it's going to work. I don't trust you. At one point, Dr. Oz says, well, why do you come over to my house? We'll have dinner. She's like, I wouldn't trust you. You jam a needle in me when I was looking the other direction. That's apparently where their relationship is at. But folks, do you see what's happening here? Pro-vaccine people are starting to really get confused and lose faith. Why? Because Tony Fauci, as I said last week, is basically lying to everybody. Now, it would probably stand up in court. I wouldn't be able to say he was lying because what he's telling you is the truth, but he has mixed up the words. He's mixed it up in a way that people aren't hearing what he's saying. When he says, well, clinical disease, it is effective at stopping clinical disease, but not necessarily. There will be some, growth in the nasal pharynx, whatever that means to people. He knows he's being confusing. What he should really say is, we really don't know that this stops infection at all, and we're concerned about it. But I want to take this a step further today because I've been making that clear. But do they really not know? Do they really not know whether or not this vaccine stops infection? Because Ben Shapiro obviously thinks it stops infection. He doesn't realize he can be a disease-carrying super spreader after getting the vaccine. So when he goes into a mall and he goes into a movie theater and he rips that mask off and bravely marches forward after his vaccine, the truth is all that vaccine did was turning him into a silent super spreader, otherwise known as an asymptomatic person. And they don't get this because of the word salad that Tony Fauci has been going through. So let me explain it. Megan, Ben, pull up your chairs. Joe Rogan, if you don't understand that, pull your chairs right up here and let's just go through the trials, shall we? Okay? When we look at the Moderna and the Pfizer trials, this is what they explained to us. Here's just what they were talking about. A study to evaluate efficacy, the number of participants with a first occurrence of COVID-19 starting 14 days after the second dose. So I'm pointing this out so that you understand this, that what they're saying is 14 days after the second dose was when they determined that famous 95% efficacy. And then in the other trial, study to describe, which one is this? Is this Pfizer? This is Pfizer. First was Moderna. This is Pfizer. Study to describe the safety tolerability. Confirmed COVID-19 in phase 2-3 participants without evidence of infection before vaccination from 7 days after the second dose. Now remember, we talked to you about what these numbers were. So 7 days for Pfizer after the second dose, they determined they were 95% effective. 14 days after the Moderna second dose, they determined that it was around 95% effective, but not effective at stopping the infection known as SARS-CoV-2, but only at stopping the symptoms. Here's why this is becoming a problem, and this is what I'm going to focus on. This is Moderna. They had 11 infections in the vaccinated group within 14 days after the second shot. They admitted it right there. And this is where they said it was 95% effective. This is where the lie began. The world started thinking Meghan McCain didn't get it, and Ben Shapiro and Joe Rogan all thought that meant 95% effective at stopping the illness. It's not. It's at stopping your symptoms. But look what they're admitting right there, that 11 of the cases, they had 11 people, 14 days after getting the second shot, they already had 11 people that had caught COVID anyway. The vaccine was already failing in the trials is the point that I want to make here. And for Pfizer, if you look at their numbers, it was 7 days out after the second vaccination had gone through the whole protocol. They had 9 people that already had caught the virus after receiving the second shot. Those are huge numbers. Within just like a week or 2 weeks, you already have people getting sick. But I want to remind you, we brought this to your attention, that the British Medical Journal publisher or editor, Peter Doshi, did an investigation deep into the trials, and he pointed out something that was really disturbing. Here's the article and what he had to say. Peter Doshi, Pfizer and Moderna's 95% effective vaccines. We need more details and the raw data. Look what he goes on to say. Pfizer reported 170 PCR-confirmed COVID-19 cases split between 8, I think it ended up being 9, but he's saying 8 people that were in the vaccinated group where the vaccine had failed them, they had gotten symptoms, and 162 people that got symptoms that hadn't gotten the vaccine at all. They were in the placebo group. Obviously, they could still catch it, but the point is 8 people caught it after getting the vaccine. But these numbers were dwarfed by a category of disease called suspected COVID-19. Those with symptomatic COVID-19 that they refused to PCR test for one reason or another, which is very suspicious. According to FDA's report on Pfizer's vaccine, there were 3,410 total cases of suspected but unconfirmed COVID-19 in the overall study population. 1,594 occurred in the vaccine group. 1,594 people within just weeks of receiving the second vaccine had already caught the illness anyway. So when Tony Fauci is sitting there saying, we're still waiting on the data, I'm sorry. That is baloney. You are not waiting on data. And by the way, we don't need to wait for Biden to inject 100 million people in America and millions of people around the world that are now using it on an emergency use basis. That's not where our information should be coming from. And by the way, we reported last week, New York Times is saying that that surveillance system won't even really be up and running until after all these people are vaccinated. So that's not who we should be studying. There is one simple question that needs to happen right now. And by the way, no one will let me in the White House. If you do, we'll start getting some truth in there. But Tucker Carlson or Laura Ingraham or any of these people that seem to have enough guts to ask a decent question, can someone ask Tony Fauci this question? How many people right now in the Pfizer trial that are still in that trial, by the way, and how many people in the Moderna trial that are still in that trial right now, by the way, can we go ahead, since we paid you billions of dollars to study this vaccine from all over the world, you have all the money in the world, you're going to make a killing off this vaccine, can you do me a favor? Will you PCR test all 45,000 people in the one trial and all 30,000 people in the other trial? In fact, no, let's just limit it to those that got the vaccine group. We'll cut it in half. We'll save you some money. So about 15,000 people in one trial and about 22.5 thousand people need to get a PCR test right now. And tell us, how many people are testing positive for having gotten wild COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 virus after having received their second shots? Really easy, Tony. We don't need to wait till the end of time. And Ben Shapiro's tired of being confused about this. So is Meghan McCain. So maybe you two pull it up. You pulled up your chairs. Maybe you guys can help me ask this question. How many people have been infected with the virus after the second shot? That's what trials are there for. That's what these people submitted themselves to, and that's what we paid you to do. Let's get to the bottom of it, because we know in the very beginning of this trial, we already had nearly 10 in each group just a week or two into this. I'll bet you it's in the thousands, and I bet you they know. Because they have no trouble lying or fudging the facts, there's a reason Tony Fauci and no one in the world is saying this vaccine stops infection. Remember, we're like 3 months into this now. They do know. and they're not telling you that. Ben, I have news for you. If you want to get that vaccine to protect yourself from the virus, go right ahead. Not going to stop you. Megan, you too. But if you think it's going to protect grandma or somehow get us to herd immunity, you are kidding yourself. And in fact, you are not doing the proper research. Here's what you need to know. This is the current worldometer around the world. This is where the virus is at all on its own. We have roughly, what is it, 20, do we have that? Here we go. It's coming. Worldometer has the current infection rate for the entire world. You're going to find this really interesting. Ben, Megan, Joe, Wendy, here it is. There's 21,961,486 people currently infected with SARS-CoV-2 in the world. 21,869,506, otherwise known as 99.6% of them, are considered to be mild conditions, meaning they got the sniffles and maybe a cough. So while you're terrified and got your hair on fire and need to protect yourself, I think you have to ask yourself, bring it back up. Megan, Ben, Joe, Joe's out, he's not getting it, but Megan and Ben, do you really think that you're in that 0.4% group in the world that are seriously ill, that have other comorbidities that are putting them at risk, that you're in that 0.4% that's going to have a serious or critical reaction to the virus? This vaccine doesn't stop any of that. And I think they're going to have to admit that at some point. And I'm glad that you're getting frustrated, those of you that have been pro-vaccine the whole time. You deserve to be frustrated. You've been lied to. You should have looked beyond it, or you should have watched the Highwire. But those are the facts, Jack. All right. You know, when we think about how the world is reacting to this, I don't think you can really think any better or look any further than this video. I think this explains my sentiment of the idea of vaccinating everybody with a vaccine that clearly does not work. This was in Australia at the Australian Open.
It's been a time of heartfelt challenge. It's been a time of deep loss and extraordinary sacrifice for everyone. And with vaccinations on the way, rolling out in many countries around the world, it's now a time for optimism and hope for the future.
I tell you what, I'm sure glad I'm not working for the pro-vaccine side, because I don't know how you sell this thing. This is a disaster, just as Meghan McCain said. A lot of that's due to the great work all of you have done sharing the videos from the Highwire and all the other great international scientists from around the world that are pointing out the problems with the vaccine and the problems with lockdown and the fact that we should have been through this by now. I have an awesome show coming up. I don't know if you heard about the fact that people are really, they are fed up, and this is, no one's more fed up probably than Alfie Oakes, who's just taking it into his own hands. I'm going to let you come into my store, my health food store, not wearing a mask if you don't want to. You can wear one if you want to, but you are free inside of his stores. We're going to talk to him a little bit later in the show. And then I really want to get behind, farming and meat production. These discussions about synthetic meats. I'm going to be talking to Shad Sullivan, who put out a video in the middle of this crisis about the destruction to the lives of the farmers and our future food supply. Super fascinating conversation I've been wanting to have for a very long time. But first, it's time for the Jackson Report. Jeffrey, it's one of those things where they say you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I mean, we keep doing this every single week. I get it. Ben's got a lot of pride. Megan has a lot of pride. They're obviously not watching what we're talking about here. But you get a little giddy inside when you know for like 12 months we've been right about this. We said it, right? Go ahead and make that sausage in front of everybody. Show them how you make a vaccine. Show them how you test it. Show them how you lie about it. And eventually, even those that used to believe in it will start really losing faith. They're losing faith, Jeffrey. I think it's really quite inspiring where we're going to. But what do you got for us this week?
Yeah, it's nice to see some of these voices that have been public fire back just with the obvious common sense stuff. So this week, we're going to look at some information, some data. It paints an interesting picture. And here we go. So about 6 months ago, in September, India was recording about 100,000 cases a day. They were on track to overtake the United States. And then all of a sudden, things plummeted things disappeared. ICU people going to the ICU came down, the cases came down, the mortality came down, and people have been scratching their heads. Experts have been scratching their heads trying to figure out what's been going on, and it's still continuing throughout January into February. And we have this article from the BBC here, and they're kind of making an assumption at this point. It says, "Is the epidemic finally coming to an end in India?"
Wow.
And it quotes some infectious disease virologists saying, "Quote, my hunch is exposure to the infection is much higher than what the surveys indicate. Also, we should not be taking India as one. In some cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Pune, and Bangalore, up to 60% of people have been found with antibodies to the virus. So it's all very uneven," says Dr. Shahid Jamil, a leading virologist. And then we have this quote from the article: "If we have had a massive number of very mild or asymptomatic cases, we might have reached a threshold of herd immunity already." There's that word.
Wow.
If that is the case, we still have to explain why so many Indian cases have been so mild, asked Partha Mukhopadhyay, a senior fellow at Delhi's Center for Policy Research, who's been studying the epidemic. Now, their numbers come in at about 11 deaths per 100,000. But there's a repeating story here. So let's go over to Nepal.
Okay.
There's another headline out of there. This is just recently, and the headline is from The Guardian. It's as if there is no COVID. Nepal defies pandemic amid a broken economy. Fascinating stuff. It says, it's as if nothing has happened. The nightclubs are crowded, schools and colleges are reopening, sports venues are full. It doesn't seem like there is any COVID, says Samir Mani Diet, a public health specialist. It defies logic. With a weak public health system, families of several generations sharing crowded accommodation, and a vast migrant workforce returning from India, the coronavirus looked likely to take a serious toll in Nepal, one of Asia's poorest countries. However, the infection rate has fallen steadily from an average of 3,000 daily cases in October to about 300 in January. Last week, Nepal recorded its first day since August without a COVID-related death. In total, just over 2,000 people have died since the beginning of the outbreak in a population of nearly 30 million. Now, Nepal just started vaccinating in February, so that's not a plausible excuse for what's going on there. They're seeing about 9 deaths per 100,000. Now, I'm going to keep going here. We're going to go to Haiti. Haiti, similar story coming out of there.
These are all poor countries you're pointing out, right? These are countries that just are any of these considered first world nations?
No, these would be considered basically the thing that comes in on these articles. The same theme that comes in on these articles is not great funded public health systems.
Okay.
So these are countries without really great public health system. Also, countries with a lot of people living together, kind of on top of each other in the housing and things like that. So there's a lot of similarities between these countries on that aspect of it, just from a virus stance, from what we understand about COVID. So in Haiti, we have they're looking at COVID-19 data across the countries, and Haiti fares well. But Haitian dysphoria suffers. So in this, now we start getting into some numbers. This is from Haiti. Numbers of cumulative cases per 100,000 were about the same for Canada and the Dominican Republic, 2016 and 1,910 respectively, or about 1.5 times higher than the world rate. While that was only 99 for Haiti, more than 12 times lower than the world rate. Now, Haiti borders the Dominican Republic,
right.
So they're on the same island.
Same island. I actually flew in there when I was working with the Doctors television show. We flew in after the earthquake. We had to land in the Dominican Republic airport and then take a bus like 10 hours up over the top of the mountain and down to the other side, which is Haiti. So it's basically just an island divided in half. So certainly, unless the virus, reads a line on a map, we should be seeing an equal amount of infection and death. But what you're saying is, is there a discrepancy in how their medical systems are? Is there a difference there?
Well, Haiti is a lot less funded than the Dominican Republic. And as we'll see moving forward, their lockdowns were vastly different as well. The Dominican Republic followed more of the United States version of the lockdown, where Haiti was just a small fraction of that. And I have some evidence of that as well. Now, let's look at the death rate of Haiti. So going back to that article, it says the number of cumulative cases per 100,000 was about the same in Canada and the Dominican Republic. Number of death rate was about twice higher in Canada than in the Dominican Republic, 50 and 24 respectively. This rate was only 2 for Haiti, or 14 times lower than the world rate. Now, when we're talking about the world rate of deaths per 100,000 people, we have basically the UK, Italy, and the US coming in third of the developed nations. The United States has about 154,000 deaths per 100,000. But let's take a look at that stringency map. So this is out of the University of Oxford, and it basically shows there's the US there, Mexico, Canada, and they're in purple, and that was a 70 on the lockdown scale. And the scale is, you can see, it's 10
70
to 90.
being like 70 out of a rating of 100 for how hard you're locking down. We're locking down in the 70 percentile of lockdowns.
Right. And
Okay.
if you want to throw that back up again, on the bottom right there under Florida, there's that island with 2 colors on it. One color is light blue, one is purple. The purple is the Dominican Republic and the light blue is Haiti.
Wow.
You can see that Dominican Republic follows the same stringency as the US, where Haiti is only a 30. So only a fraction of what's going on in the Dominican Republic. So there's some explanation that needs to happen on that, because again, the vaccinations are not there in time, and the public health system is not able to get those out as rapidly. So the excuse of herd immunity through a vaccination is not going to hold water in a lot of these countries. And then we go on to Africa, same story, really hitting in Africa. And this was the USA Today fact checker, our friends at the fact checkers. So fact check: coronavirus deaths across the continent of Africa are far less than the US. The survey says true, according to the fact checkers. And again, poorly funded health systems are another commonality here. Only about 85 deaths per 100,000. So just a little over half of what the US is going to. So let's talk about the US. Obviously, the US has been a major driver throughout the world of how these lockdowns were handled. The UK and the US were some of the first to clamp down really hard, some of the first to mask their entire population, double mask. But it appears,
before we even go further, though, Jeffrey, let me get this clear: that of the entire world, the 3 highest death rates, so we would have to guess the 3 places that handled this virus the worst would be Italy, number 1, is that what you said? Number 2 is the UK, and number 3 was the United States of America under Tony Fauci's lead. I mean, I just showed you Ben Shapiro, Meghan McCain, everybody, calling, and I think that hashtag Fire Fauci is skyrocketing this week. But, it's really quite shocking to think that the United States of America, which has the greatest medical system in the world, and I think this is the point you're making, right? We have the greatest medical system in the world, probably the most doctors per capita in existence. We did the hardest locking down, like we were told by the WHO, but everybody else that didn't have our doctors, didn't have our hospitals, didn't have a genius like Tony Fauci are doing much better, reaching herd immunity, and have a far lower death rate than we do.
It appears so. It definitely appears so from what the data is. And again, the headlines and the speculation is all over the place. The experts are out in full force trying to explain what's going on, perhaps explain away in some cases what's going on. But the evidence is there, and it's staring everyone right in the face, especially in India for these last several months. So
well, maybe that's what Meghan McCain and Ben Shapiro really need to do. Instead of getting the vaccine, which isn't going to do anything to really help you, just move to a third world nation for a while where they've already reached herd immunity and they aren't locking down, and you can be safe from this virus while the rest of us try to maybe start acting like a third world nation so that we could get to the end of this thing. All right, so where are we at, though? You said the U.S., after all the lockdowns, all of our total terrible response, which seems to be the medical response.
Right. We may be not able to avoid that dreaded herd immunity yet. This is an article out of the Wall Street Journal. According to this article, this is Marty Makary. He's a Johns Hopkins surgeon, public health expert. He says, we'll have herd immunity by April. He said the COVID cases have dropped 77% in 6 weeks. And he says, in large part, because natural immunity from prior infection is far more common than can be measured by testing. Testing has been capturing only from 10% to 25% of infections. Then he goes on to say, antibody studies almost certainly underestimate natural immunity. Antibody testing doesn't capture antigen-specific T cells, which develop memory once they're activated by the virus. Survivors of the 1918 Spanish flu were found in 2008, 90 years later, to have memory cells still able to produce neutralizing antibodies.
Wow.
So there's some, and he's been getting a lot of play in the media, which is interesting because usually that type of talk is not picked up by the mainstream. But again, people argue, well, clearly in the U.S., it's the vaccine. This is what's causing this.
Yeah,
despite
that's what I would say. There's like, no, it's not herd immunity because we're finally vaccinating, right?
Right. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't. From the data that we're going to show you right now, it doesn't look like it's the case. So, less than in the U.S., we have about 5.76% of the population that's been fully vaccinated. That's according to a chart that was run by The Guardian. So, I mean, it's just a small fraction of that of the percentage of the population. So,
Sure,
not enough, obviously.
5.6% or whatever shouldn't lead to a 75% reduction. Certainly, those numbers don't add up. Interesting.
And that's what Fauci was saying. We needed at least 70, and then he changed it to 80% when he got called out on that. So we're nowhere close to, if we're going to be following Dr. Fauci's prescription for the herd immunity via vaccination. That's where we're at, 5.76%. Now let's jump over to Israel. Some interesting information here. We've been talking about this behind the scenes for a couple of weeks now. We're going to show you some graphs that's been going on in Israel. But first, they are one of the first almost fully vaccinated countries. That's kind of what they've been leading their strong foot with here, and they're developing a kind of a passport. It's called a green badge. So this is out of the New York Times. As Israel reopens, whoever does not get vaccinated will be left behind. So there's a two-tier system that's coming here, vaccinated and unvaccinated, and it's a lot of legal and moral concerns. And it says in here, under a new green badge system that function as both a carrot and a stick, the government is making leisure activities accessible only to people who are fully vaccinated or recovering starting Sunday. 2 weeks later, restaurants, event halls, and conferences will be allowed to operate under those rules. Customers and attendees will have to carry a certificate of vaccination with a QR code. So even in that sentence, it contradicts itself. It says, well, if you recovered, you can access these, but you got to have that QR code and vaccination status in there. So that's really what's going on here. And then breaking recently, just yesterday, the Israeli government adopts a law allowing the names of unvaccinated to be shared. Now, this is a law valid for 3 months or until the COVID pandemic is declared over. Now
so
they're
they can
saying
shame you, they can publicly humiliate you, and try and force you into compliance. Again, it's always shocking to me when I think about all of the years that, my friends that were, Jewish and their families always talked about, we can never forget the Holocaust so that we never repeat, these types of actions. And yet to watch Israel be the first one, putting some form of a passport or badge on their citizens, shaming them for not complying to being injected by an experimental product, which, as we just showed you in the trials, already had people that were catching the virus even after receiving the vaccine. And this is probably why we're not seeing Tony Fauci or certainly Moderna and Pfizer doing the obvious, just go PCR test everyone right now. And by the way, I know I should be putting that much energy in PCR. Here's what you do. You go to both the groups that got the vaccine, PCR test of everyone that tests positive, then let's get deeper into it. Right now, let's move into blood tests and really confirm that they caught the virus after the vaccination. Israel deserves that information. The people that are going to be, publicly flogged and humiliated should probably deserve that information, and those that are thinking about getting the vaccine. This lie has got to come to an end. Because I think it's clear as you're laying out this data, to me, looking at third world nations doing better, that it appears that medicine and advanced modern medicine is what is actually killing people, not COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2, not the virus, but our approach towards it. And the better, more qualified you are to, deliver that approach, the less your chance of survival is.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because let's look at the Israeli coverage of their vaccination program. It's at this point is pretty thorough, especially for the over 60s. But our world data, this is a graph, and it basically shows the over 60s, just about 80% of them have had 2 doses. and the 16 to 59s a little further down that list. But
Yeah.
I'm showing that just to give the next graph. This is the severity, cases, a severe number of patients, some gravity. So this is from the Israeli Ministry of Health, directly from their website. It's translated. So on Friday, December 18th is when the vaccination campaign started in Israel. So you can see that line right there. And then all of a sudden we have a mountain growing of severe number of patients, active cases of severe number of patients. Now the next graph is the death rate from that same time frame. And we see again, 12/18 is when the vaccination campaign started. Here comes the mountain.
And we're
So
talking
what the
about
heck?
one of the most thorough vaccine campaigns in the world. As you pointed out, in just almost a month, they've managed to get 80% of their high-risk category vaccinated. So that really means something. As they're vaccinating, their death rate and serious illness is skyrocketing after the vaccination program, the opposite of what you would expect to be seeing.
Right, and those vaccines have not been tested against mortality or it's clinical illness, as Fauci
Right.
said, not severe illnesses. So, someone needs to look at that data and really explain what's going on, because those mountains are bigger than they really, if you look at that whole graph, have been throughout the entire outbreak. So, very interesting stuff there. And the final point here is. The testing is now expanding to children. These are big headlines coming out of both the UK and the US. They use very similar words here. Would you let your kids be a COVID jab guinea pig? Children as young as 6 receive first Oxford jab in new trial. They have about 300 kids between ages 6 to 17. And it says the trials, which began at Oxford University and its partner sites in London, Southampton, and Bristol yesterday, will see 240 get vaccinated and others receive a control meningitis jab, not placebo. We have a control. So at least they're using the right words, but it sure would be nice to have them give these kids a control to see some real data. And that's Oxford's
Well, I mean,
vaccine.
and frankly, when I see them, Israel saying that we want to be able to publicly announce the names of people that aren't getting vaccinated, I'd like to announce the names of what type of parent puts their child into a trial for a product that is experimental. And frankly, it's the one group that doesn't need this vaccine. These kids are having almost no death at all. We know this. They barely spread it. So they have no benefit, as far as I would guess, right? No benefit and a high-end risk based on all that we don't know. What kind of parent, honestly, puts their, oh good, I'm being brave. I'm putting my kids on a rocket ship to Mars. I hope they survive. I'm doing, a favor for the world with my child. I think this is horrible.
The ethics is highly questionable here, and I would love to understand how the ethical review board comes to allow the green light for these tests.
And think about this. Think about this, Jeffrey. They're testing on kids before Fauci even is willing to do the proper study, PCR test people, to see if it stops the infection. If it does not stop the infection, which you should establish before you put innocent children in harm's way of an experimental product, at least establish that it stops infection and therefore transmission, because that would be the only reason at all, if there is any, to give it to kids that have virtually no problem with this.
Right. And in the US, kind of a similar story. Again, this is the New York Times. Similar story, similar headline with the wording, my teens are coronavirus vaccine guinea pigs. There's that word again. It says in the article, recruiting's been off to a slow start. You think they're having trouble finding participants. Right now, they're just doing yeah, right now they're doing teenagers 12 to 18, but in the article, Moderna says they're planning on doing kids as young as, if they get emergency use for that, they're kids as young as 6 months, 12 and younger, all the way down to 6 months. But let's take a look. Let's put this in perspective. We're talking about the rationality of trying to do this at this point in this coronavirus response. Let's look at the VAERS. This is the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System.
Right.
And we have some numbers here. So we have 929 deaths, about almost 1,900 hospitalizations, almost 3,500 trips to the urgent care. Now, these are reported after the vaccination, associated with the vaccination, the COVID vaccination. And as we know, again, New York Times, this is millions are as millions get the shot, the FDA struggles to get the safety monitoring system running. We covered this last week.
Right.
And,
And this is what I was mentioning before. But to be clear, that's a different safety monitoring system. That's specific to COVID. VAERS is just where doctors can report or people report their injuries. And we've said for years on this show, the Harvard study, just for everyone who's joining us the first time, CDC paid Harvard Medical School over $1 million to investigate the VAERS system, see how efficient it was at capturing illnesses. And what they reported was that less than 1% of the total amount of injuries actually ever get reported to VAERS. Now, I want to make that clear, but Jeffrey, I have to assume under these circumstances, with the watchful eye of media and more people aware, probably because Joe Biden and Kamala Harris said that there was the possibility this vaccine could be dangerous, which really shifted this whole conversation for all of us. Their lack of trust in Trump, which led to their lack of trust in the vaccine, really woke people up, and we're seeing all the headlines of people dying. I'm going to guess that reporting is got to be better than 1%. I'm just putting that out there. I doubt it's probably much more higher than 10 or 20%. So all of these numbers are probably still really low compared to those that are being injured, but probably not as low or below what they should be as they have been in the past. But I'm guessing on all of those things.
Yeah.
But still, nearly 1,000 people dead in the couple of months that we've been rolling this thing out. Not really a good sign. So what's your point?
Right. So my point here is, let's take a look at the American Academy of Pediatrics. So they're tracking the deaths in children from COVID. So here we have a graph. This is the newest data, February 18th. And we see here, we can zoom in a little bit, cumulative child deaths, 247. This is since the beginning of the pandemic. That represents basically 0.06% of children of the total deaths. So just to wrap this up, there's some quick math. There's about 74 million children under 18. By the way, that's how the AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, defines children, is anywhere between 0 to 17, 0 to 19, depending on how the state does it. But there's about 74 million children in that category, and 247 of them have died from COVID. Now, in the U.S., there's about 66 million people in the U.S. and that have received this vaccine, and almost 1,000 of them have died in association with it. So just to put that in perspective, when we're talking about starting studies in kids, is this really necessary at this point? And ethically, scientifically, there seems to be a lot of questions before we start rolling these kids up in these trials.
You're really pointing out essentially, so 1,000 people out of about 66 million died that got the vaccine, and only 247 out of 75 million. So clearly the virus for children is not as deadly as the vaccine is. And so when we ask ourselves this question, well, how do we tell, the risk-reward ratio? It is clear that children will fare worse if the vaccine holds up in its death rate compared to what we've seen in the virus rate. Can we bring that chart back up, though? And I don't know if we created this. Maybe this is a mistake, but this is the first time I've seen it. But the one that says what the AAP is calling the death rate, I just want to look at this for a second. This is live for you folks. No one expected this. I didn't either. But look how it says percent children of total deaths is 0.06%. They're saying that 75 million, that 247 dying out of 75 million is a death rate of 0.06%, but somehow the percent of child cases resulting in death is even lower at 0.01%. Remember, that means the survival rate of those who got infected is 99.99%, but the survival rate of all children, whether infected or not, is only 99.94%. Something's wrong with that chart. It should be the opposite. And if we could run some math, if someone wants to get back to me, 75 million divided into 247, what is that percentage? I doubt it's 0.06%. It should be a ton of zeros there.
Right.
Well, okay, I'm hearing that's just the kids that were infected. But the far right category just said those infected. Anyway, we'll look into that. Either way, clearly, obviously, children are dying at a really, really low rate in the 0.00. I think it's multiple zeros when we look at the entire population of children. Jeffrey, super interesting, and I think it all plays together, doesn't it? When we're getting fed up, when we look at what's taking place, when we look at nations that are not locking themselves down, not vaccinating themselves, don't have medical care, they're doing better than the greatest medical society in the world. That really makes you start to wonder when you see all the words scrambling by Tony Fauci to get around the fact of what we already knew, that the vaccine was already failing in the first week and first 2 weeks of the trial. Clearly, we could get that information right now. How bad has it failed now that we're, about 90 days past the second shot of the Pfizer trials or more? There's a lot of data that should not be a mystery any longer to Tony Fauci, and therefore maybe he can help enlighten Ben Shapiro and Meghan McCain and others like them that wanted so badly to believe in this product. Thank you, Jeffrey. That was amazing.
All right. Thanks, Del.
Keep up the good work. For those of you that want to get deeper into these conversations, definitely go to thehighwire.com and check out the Jackson report, where he gets into a lot of the conversations we're having in much more detail. And if you're watching this show for the first time, we're like no other news agency in the world. We provide you with all of the links to the data that we are sharing so that you can read it yourself. Not just the excerpts that you're seeing, not just the little quotes and the highlights like you see on CNN and MSNBC and go, oh, they must be telling me the truth. Stop thinking they must be telling you the truth. In fact, don't trust that I'm telling you the truth. I don't want you to just blanketly hop from one person that you just believed in completely over to me. I want you to start doing your own research. That's the point of this show. If you are not a member of our mailing list, then you're missing the power of what the Highwire is offering you. Just go to thehighwire.com, simply put your email in there. It's totally encrypted. We don't send you advertisements. We're not trying to sell you things. We want you every Monday to receive all of the trials so that guess what? You will have the Pfizer trial in your hand. You'll have the Moderna trial in your hand. You'll see those quotes from the FDA when they're admitting that the vaccine was failing 1 week in, and you'll be able to prove it to your friends. You won't have to say, hey, Del Bigtree and the Highwire said blah, blah, blah. You'll be able to say, no, here is the actual proof. How did I find it? Del Bigtree helped me find it in the Highwire team, but here's the proof. Here's the trials themselves. And if you know Meghan McCain, you can hand it right to her. And if you can possibly get Ben, come on to my show. I would love to enlighten you on all these things and how you actually do research. Now, speaking of supporting and how we're able to do all of this and do the brilliant research around the world with our international body of scientists that read these trials and bring all this information to the Highwire, I want to point out that this is your last week to donate to the High Road Project. And I want to just do something special right now, just to give you a sense of what I think the High Road actually means. I'm sitting at my desk. This is our studio right here. But the High Road, let me show you how close to the world I work in, what the High Road actually means. I'm going to walk right now through our studio. Let's just do this, see if this works. See if the microphones work, okay? This is our studio, just a few steps from my desk. Right behind here is the control room. Let's go ahead and say hi to everybody, shall we? Hey, everybody, there they are. I don't know if you saw that. We didn't plan on lighting that. That's our mistake. That's what you get for being improvisational. But right over to here, this is the front door that brings us into our warehouse, the sound studio. And I simply step right out here, out this door, and here we are, right there. 5 steps away from the door is the High Road. And if you can see all the way back to the offices, that's where I walk every single day, coming down this road. If you want to be a part of the inspiration, your name there, or the name of someone that was injured by a vaccine in your family, or perhaps it's just a sentiment or a positive statement. I'm going to be walking this with my team every single day from the offices over to the studio. If you want to be a part of that, this is your last chance. We're pouring concrete starting next week. This is it. It's on. So if you want a brick, go ahead and make it happen. If you don't know what I'm talking about, here's what the High Road is all about. Because of the generosity of many of our donors, we have been able to acquire a property of our own. And every Thursday, I have to walk from those offices over to where our studio is being put together. That road to the Highwire should be paved with the foundational principles of what we represent. I'm excited to present a bold and exciting way to involve you to put your love, your heart, your passion, your faith into a place that will be here on this campus forever. We're offering you the opportunity to purchase one brick that will be a part of this road, the High Road.
You can not only support our vital programs, but you can become a permanent fixture of the ICANN campus. For as little as $100, you can purchase a brick that you can personalize with a name, an inscription, or maybe even a vaccine-injured loved one in your family.
It's going to take each and every one of us, brick by brick, building the future for our children and the world.
To become part of this exciting project, go to iCanDecide.org and click on Buy a Brick.
All right, well, I think that's a great opportunity. I hope you'll take that opportunity because I want you to be a part of the foundation of the work that we do here. Every day, you can be a part of our journey. So if you haven't done it, go ahead and get that brick. All right. You know, as you all know, last week we had a really unconventional show. I was basically in this place, it was just Patrick and Cole and I that, you know, took to the incredibly icy streets of Austin, Texas, to come to the studio and broadcast out. We were unable to prepare the show, so I'm really happy. The whole team's back. Most of us have fixed our plumbing issues. I was on a rampage. I think I had about 10 broken pipes. I managed to get it plastered and painted because I don't have enough time to waste. So I just figured, let's get this done, get it over with, so we're in really good shape at our house. But while all of that was going on, I talked about last week, going to the grocery store was yet again one of those experiences we've seen over, you know, several times this year, like we live in the Soviet Union or something. Where is the food? Where does it come from? All these thoughts run through your head as it's going on. Could this ever be a permanent fixture? Are we at risk of those images we've seen from communist nations where they have bread lines? And as I started thinking about that, there was another huge headline that's, you know, been in our heads. One of the things came from the World Economic Forum. I played that video recently, the 8 predictions for the world, and they talk about you're not going to own anything, you'll be renting, but this idea, you'll eat much less meat. An occasional treat, not a staple for the good of the environment and our health. So they're going to, you know, reduce meat. And then we saw Bill Gates make this incredible statement that Bill Gates, rich nations should shift entirely to synthetic beef. Boy, does that sound delicious. Synthetic beef is our future. It makes me think of like Soylent Green and other, you know, these futuristic novels where we're eating fake food. What is it made out of? Is it made out of other people? Things like that. But when those questions are going through my head, I started thinking about farming. I talked about this. I talked about, you know, what are we doing for farmers? There's been talk that Biden might have taken back COVID-19 funding for farmers. Bill Gates is now buying up farms everywhere. He's now the largest private farm owner in the world. America's biggest owner of farmland is now Bill Gates. Terrifying thought. You've got, you know, King of Monsanto has just taken over the USDA. All of those things made me remember a viral video that we looked into right in the middle of COVID from a rancher, really a voice crying from the wilderness. This is what that looked like.
Hey everybody, this is Shad Sullivan coming to you from the headwaters of Bitter Creek, Archer County, North Texas. We have to talk. We are plowing under vegetable crops from coast to coast. We are euthanizing millions of chickens. We are aborting sows and burying feeder pigs. We are dumping milk by the hundreds of thousands of gallons, and now they are preparing us to depopulate the fat cattle ready to harvest. We are in crisis in America. This is a crisis, and you're going to go hungry.
You know, I think about just incredibly dire warning, and I remember those moments. Remember when we were hearing about strawberries just being plowed under, and I think there was pigs being piled up, just killing them and not giving them, you know, getting out to the people. Just these horrifying images, and this attack on farmers and ranchers, and the idea, I mean, when I think of the American cowboy. Is there an image that represents the United States of America more than a cowboy out on the range and driving the cattle across the range? I think of the Garden of Eden and images of cows and goats, and we have been put, we're the keepers of these animals, and I just wonder what is really happening. Well, I wondered enough. We actually sent out our part of our team to go out and meet up with Shad on his ranch in Colorado. He has a ranch in Texas, a ranch in Colorado, and Texas. So we're in Colorado during this video shoot, and I want you to remember, we're able to do beautiful pieces like you're about to see because you bought a brick on the high road, because you become a recurring donor. Take a look at this incredible story. This is Shad on his own ranch, Shad Sullivan. Here you go.
Today we are heading out to our family ranching operation. It's called the Sullivan Ranch. It's located on top of Antelope Mesa in northwestern Crowley County, Colorado. Our family has owned this ranch for 71 years. I've grown up here and have deep roots planted here in this, not only on this ranch, but in this community and in this country. When the pandemic hit, we started seeing food shortages across the board.
The frenzy is real.
There is a shortage, triggering panic.
Customers started fighting over toilet paper and water.
Store shelves nationwide are dwindling or totally empty.
Even though we were seeing empty shelves in the grocery stores, whether it be through agricultural products or other products, the reason behind that was because of a backlog in production. A few months ago, I was out in the field in Texas. We were baling hay, and I saw this email from the United States Department of Agriculture that angered me, truthfully, and I thought it was something that we need to be talking about. The consumer needs to know how volatile their food supply is, and I did the video off the cuff and off the top of my head, not thinking it would go viral.
Yesterday, the first shipment of imported beef from the country of Namibia hit the shores of the United States of America. And yet this morning they are telling us to prepare to euthanize harvest-ready cattle. Am I the only one that sees a problem in this?
When I uploaded the video, within an hour, there was 10,000, and then pretty quick, in a couple days, there's 1 million hits on it, and I'm getting messages from all over the world. And I had a lot of legislators call me, both state and a few nationals. I had an individual very close to the president call me the day after I did the video, and he said to me, "Thank you so much for doing the video. I understand your frustration. I've been following the beef industry, and we're here to help you." And it was the next day when President Trump came out and signed the executive order forcing packing facilities to stay open.
To keep the food chain flowing, President Trump tonight signed an executive order. Under the Defense Production Act, he is now declaring beef, pork, and poultry processors essential businesses that must stay open to feed the nation.
For the last 5 years, our industry has been in turmoil. Nobody has made any money, and it's been really tough. Every product in the United States, with the exception of pork and beef, requires country of origin labeling. As it stands now, we can import beef from 21 different countries. As long as we repackage it in the United States, they can throw the product of the USA label on it and get by with it. But that's not country of origin labeling. It's a very deceptive practice. The United States is highly regulated. We have the best protocol in the world, and we're importing inferior quality beef, which is inspected on a lower level and a lower scale than what ours is. Why have we allowed JBS, a Brazilian-owned meat processing company, to become the largest beef processor, not only in the world, but in the United States? Why are we allowing these foreign entities to control our whole food system when we have laws, antitrust, anti-monopolistic laws, to keep that from happening?
So the grass that you see on the ground here is predominantly blue grama, and it is native to this area. It's known as a short grass that's high in nutrients and high in fat and protein. We've always taken a lot of pride in doing what is right for the cattle and balancing that with profitability and nature. And so we take good care of our land, we take good care of our animals. You learned how to cook and do all this during harvest, because your dad would have 20 men thrashing beans.
Mother would say, today is your turn to cook supper tonight.
You grew a garden and preserved what you grew.
We raised chickens in the spring, and we had a big chicken kill and ate a lot of chicken, froze them, so we never went without meat. We were very blessed, very blessed. It wasn't a life of luxury, but it was all we knew, and it was good. It was good.
We ranch because we're tied to the land, and we're deeply rooted here. It is who we are, it's how we identify ourselves, and I am concerned about the future of our ranch. When you have 5 years of profit loss, sure, it makes you very, very worried about the future. The oligarchy that controls our food supply system must be broke up. We're not in it for the money, obviously, right? But we're in it because we want to feed our families, we want to feed America, and we love this country. And that's why we do it. This is where my dad, Jerry Sullivan, was buried. He wanted to be buried on the ranch and wanted to be able to see Pikes Peak. My dad always said, the only thing that's gonna wake the nation up is if not only people had to sit in the dark, but if they had to sit in the dark, cold and hungry. And they would come to a better way of thinking about where their food comes from, where their fiber comes from, where their warmth and their heat, the basic life necessities. People are waking up because of COVID, because of those empty shelves, because of the lack of processing taking place in those facilities, whether it's in the toilet paper facility or the food processing facility. People had to wake up because all of a sudden the things that met their needs weren't there. Our food system in the United States is vulnerable, and it is worse now because of the pandemic.
I'm joined right now by Shad Sullivan. Thank you, first of all, Shad, for allowing us onto your beautiful property. Those look like happy cows to me.
Yeah.
When you think about your father, who was before you, left you this ranch, and you look at the possibility that what we're seeing in America could be the end of the cowboy, of the American cowboy, of the ranch, of free roaming meat and oppression from other countries. How do you grapple with that thought? Do you have a plan for your children and the generations that, maybe we're learning to ranch and maybe it won't be there for them?
Man, that's a very difficult question to answer, Dale. It's taking a lot of oomph within yourself, within ourselves, to try to figure these things out, because we have so many attacks on agriculture right now, especially the meat industry, that really take us down the road of non-production, right? And so we sit here and think, never in my life did I think 10 years ago or even 20 years ago, we'd be talking about these issues that what will the future of your ranch be? What will the future of your kids be? Do they want to take it on? And to be honest with you, when I say I'm not sure I want my child, I have one little boy, to take this on, I'm not sure I do want him to take it on, because it's been so difficult, and the attacks are coming quicker. It's like birthing pains. They're getting worse and they're coming quicker all the time by all different entities. I mean, not just environmental organizations, but they're coming through governmental organizations. They're coming from individuals. They're coming from special interest groups. They're coming even from our own government. And it's, in my opinion, it's all a track to take private property from the individual and implement communism across the board.
I happen to agree with you, and it's something that, and sort of, you're the beginning of our work to really look into how a different approach to the United States of America that seems to be outside of free market, that seems to be outside of a republic where your rights and your land and your body are protected, that the inalienable rights by God. And what I found so shocking about your story is that, my brother is vegan. I have no problem with that. I was vegetarian for many years of my life. I actually didn't feel that healthy and decided to make a different choice. Everyone should have their choice, but it's not that people are eating less meat. What I found shocking is that, did you say we had beef coming from Africa at the point that we are killing animals and destroying the product being made by our own farmers, that we're importing African beef? How often is that? How much meat is coming from other countries when America, as we knew, is the greatest meat producing nation in the world, especially for quality? This is where we have the USDA. This is where we have environmental organizations that make sure that, every rancher is doing this the right way. I mean, there's a reason why it's expensive for you to do it. We do it the right way. And then we just open up the back door and let all of this crappy product come in here?
Well, the reason they do that is because those who import beef can put that process and put that beef on top of the United States beef and cheapen their costs up there. So the imported beef is less high. It's an inferior quality to American beef. So what they're able to do is they're able to oppress prices because they're bringing more beef in from foreign countries, oppress live cattle prices here, and then stick it to the consumer. Now, is there a moral dilemma yet there? Yes, it is. But what it's allowed is these processing companies to make record amounts of profit, especially in the last 2 years, coupled with COVID. And then we also had a beef packing plant fire in August of 2019 that really started this downhill stretch for the producers across America. And it really started a domino effect in marketing. And we had been fighting it a little bit 3 years previous, but the control is in the hands of the oligarchs, right? So we have too much power by too few people, and they're able to do and manipulate and collude and control these supply chains, right?
Now, these packing companies, Shad, they're not necessarily U.S.-based, U.S. corporations, are they?
Well, in the United States, we have 4 main packing companies, beef processing companies, 2 of which are Brazilian-owned, National Marfrig, and then JBS, the giant. That's the largest packing company in the world, in the United States, and they are able to import that beef themselves and then put it on our shelves. So what we have is we have 2 American companies and 2 foreign companies controlling your supply chain, which is very risky, and COVID showed us that, in that when the supply is in the hands of a few, anything can happen. Who would have thought? Who even thinks of those good men and women who work in those processing facilities? You weren't thinking about them. They got sick as well. They shut them down, and then you had empty shelves. So the point is,
we weren't diversified across. We need more packing plants. But you said something interesting. You just said that one fire at one packing plant affected the entire beef industry. How much was, it's hard to imagine that one plant could make that big a difference. How much was lost?
It was a fire in a boxing facility there in Holcomb, Kansas, at a packing plant. And what it did is it basically put fear into the market system. And when that fear came into the system, man, those beef processors took advantage of it incredibly. The fact is, the week after the fire, we processed more cattle than the week leading up to the fire. So the fire had nothing to do with the supply chain, but they took that and ran. They took the ability to manipulate the market over that because of the fear.
Wow. All right. So now so we have an issue with, once again, and this is something that's this is not a political show, but I've said to people, I grew up a progressive, liberal, Democrat that is really going. I now consider myself to be politically marooned. But one of the things that I feel like I've always been a buy American, inside of our country. I want the jobs to be here. I've always been against NAFTA, even when I was a Democrat. I don't see how you open up your borders to less regulated nations, to people that get paid 15 cents a day or whatever it is they're getting paid to process, when American jobs have to charge more. I don't see how there's any way for American companies, and especially, these organic grassroots farmers and ranchers and, steel workers and, you name it. If it has to be done at all, doing it in other nations is so much cheaper. We've got to figure out a way to make that an even playing field. So clearly that is crushing in, right? You have international players that don't care about the United States of America. They don't care about American farmers. But you have this other issue now. Now you have this idea of synthetic beef. You have Bill Gates buying up farmland, I'm guessing pennies on the dollar in the middle of COVID. When you hear someone that, I don't even know if Bill Gates is on your radar, but when you hear him telling the world countries like America should only be eating synthetic beef, what are your thoughts and feelings on just that idea that we can replace your work and these cows and these animals with a synthetic product?
Well, count me as a little bit crazy, but I think it goes deeper than that, Dale. I think that if you are going to end meat consumption, and that seems to be Bill's goal, what do? We replace it with meat or with plant-based products. What are in those plant-based products? There's everything in them, but one thing there is for sure is there's soy, and soy has a high estrogen level. So if we're feeding the world's men high estrogen levels, we're decreasing their ability to fight. Now, I know this sounds crazy, but this is my thought, because I've just tried to think of what is this attack on meat agriculture about? And I go back again. It's all about control, communism, right? And in order to put one world order into place, they must have control of the people. And so they're using environmental organizations and the environmental impact of beef and beef production as an excuse. But we know for sure that beef and beef production contribute less than 2% of pollutants in the world, less than 2%. And so that's really not the issue. The issue is the ability to grab private property. It's all about grabbing private property, land grabs, see it from global elites, pushing a lot of money into environmental organizations, and then they start partnering. You'll hear them called public-private partnerships, and you'll see that all coming into fruition. It's coming in big now. They're partnering with ranchers, giving them incredible amounts of money to do this, this, and this. It's top-down control is what it is. And that's what the Roundtable for Sustainable Beef is. And that's when I really knew that we were in trouble in the meat industry, and especially the beef industry. They've infiltrated our trade organizations. And now we have trade organizations. They all say, oh, we got to sit at the table with them. No, we don't have to sit at the table with them, because the end goal is to stop production and control the people. And as crazy as that sounds, that's how
Well,
I
you
feel.
know, you're allowed to. You're first of all here on the Highwire. I'm not going to censor anybody. You're allowed your opinion. Some of those things I share, and other things we may wake up to down the road and say, "My God, Shad was exactly right." But it is clear they're signaling it. We're seeing politicians right now declaring that you might as well, you know, start packing your bags. I think we had Cory Booker. Do we have these headlines? Vegan Cory Booker says, "Meat eaters, days are numbered. I'm coming after you. You're going to have to live my beautiful life." Colorado now has a statewide meat-free holiday thanks to Governor Jared Polis. Again, I don't have a problem with vegetarians, vegans. This is a free country. You have your right to live how you want, but for you to dictate that upon other people. My wife, you know, is a type O, blood type Lee. We have had moments where we've attempted some vegetarian. For her, I swear, it's like she's dying before my eyes. I know there are blood types. She just needs to have some meat in her life. What can we do to help? Like, as you know, I don't like to just feel helpless. For those of us that want to be consuming American-made beef, we want that label to mean something. When we see, you know, USDA beef, I want to know that that's American. What is it I can do to at least make sure that the products that we consume are coming from ranches like yours?
Well, I think the first thing that we have to do is we have to push legislators to enforce antitrust laws that we have. So that way we can ensure safety of our food supply and ensure the safety of the beef coming into the United States. Too much power in the hands of a few is dangerous. We saw that during COVID. You even saw it with your toilet paper, right? Not hard to do. We have to go after those people who are corrupt. Number two, the thing we have to do is we have to demand mandatory country of origin labeling. The American people, and this is where you decide, do I want liberty and freedom or do I want this control? Because every consumer in the United States deserves to be able to choose where their food comes from. Every product you buy in the United States, with the exception of pork and beef, has a country of origin label on it, and that's law. Why isn't it in pork and beef? It's because you have to follow the money from the food processors, the importers, down into the trade associations and so forth. It's a domino effect. So we ask you to call your legislators and demand mandatory country of origin label implementation. I think it's very important. We can't say that enough. We need a more viable and robust marketing system in the beef cattle industry. Right now, there's several bills that are designed to create more transparency and more competition in pricing. Who would have ever thought we would have to do that? Senator Chuck Grassley out of Iowa has a bill that requires 50% of the fat cattle traded to be bought on the open market within a 14-day period of harvest. Why are we having to create law to force competition? It doesn't make sense to me in a capitalistic nation. So those are things that we ask. You know, call your legislators, get involved in your food production. If there's one thing that COVID has done for us, it has created knowledge, and it has created knowledge about the danger of your food situation. Because as we saw, we can go without in a real big hurry. What happens if these supply chains go down because processors aren't coming to work? What happens if the trucking system is put out? I mean, let's take Austin, Texas, for example. Last week, Texas, everybody had a big storm. It was a cold storm. It was record cold, a lot of snow, but it wasn't a dangerous storm. There was no 50-mile-an-hour winds. We didn't lose our infrastructure, but yet we had a supply chain issue, and we were dumping milk in the terms of 800,000 gallons a day because we didn't have enough natural gas getting to the processors to pasteurize the milk. Why is this happening in the United States in 2021? Because the power is owned by a few, and we have to disperse that power. We have to break up the packers. We have to break up these monopolistic extortionists, or whatever you want to call them, and get the power back into the people. We
Fantastic.
have to be active. And I didn't mean for that video back in April to go viral, but I'm grateful it did now, because you know what we've done in the beef industry? We are opening at record levels small beef processing facilities and plants across this nation. and we're going farm to table at a bigger pace than we ever have. And it's incredible to watch. I love watching it.
Shad, I want to thank you for sharing that really brilliant information. I think it's really great because what you're speaking to is really a microcosm in your world of seeing something we're seeing in all of the industries. We're seeing it happen to the United States of America. It's such a brilliant look into really the ghost of Christmas forward, I always say, of our future. We are really going to be in trouble if we don't get on top of sort of this corporatized international takeover of the United States of America. Nothing represents that better than the American rancher. I hope, we're going to tune in with you. Keep us posted. And if anything comes up, please let us know. I want to be able to reach back out to you as we watch the progress over the next few years of this administration. I want to know how this administration ends up handling these issues, because these are, we are still a republic, and we still elect these people. They better be working for us. I want to know that they're working for us and they're working for you, Shad. Thank you for joining us today, and good luck. And
well,
I hope there's a future for your son in ranching that you dream about. That should be the case in a country like the United States.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you for letting us, coming out to the ranch. It was an enjoyable day, although we did get a foot of snow after you guys left. And we just appreciate the recognition that there is something happening to independent producers across the nation that needs to be fixed. And I'll say this one last thing: give me liberty or give me death. That's what Patrick Henry said in 1775. And if there's one thing I want everybody to understand, is that all of this corruption is interwoven from global hierarchy clear down into our own systems, and they all disperse out from there. It's all interwoven. So I appreciate the time, and thank you very much, Dale. It's been a pleasure.
I appreciate you, Shad. You take care. I told you we are going to start stretching our wings a little bit. Yes, we've been focused. Our nonprofit focuses on pharma, on chemicals, but it also goes into our food. How is our food? How do I know what chemicals are being used? What does organic really mean if it's coming from Namibia? How many antibiotics are they using? Is there a limit? Is there any sort of environmental groups that are weighing in on Shad? Are they weighing in on the farmers? Are they leaning on them in Namibia or Brazil? These are things that matter. And, I just had an opportunity to visit my family really quick. My father had a birthday, so it was great to spend time with my family. And, that's the progressive liberal family I came from. But for me, here's where I'm at. If we use oil at all, I'm all about, I've said it, I'm an environmentalist. I would love to see perfectly clean air, perfectly clean water. I want beautiful grasslands and healthy meat products. But if we use oil at all, I want it coming from here. I don't want oil coming from other nations. I don't want to give those jobs to anybody else. Can we create, new technologies that get us off of oil? Great. We obviously failed here in Texas. Maybe we've moved too fast. I'm open to all of those things. But I don't want to give other nations jobs. And I don't want to fight wars in other countries and bomb their buildings and create the unrest that we do when we take their resources. Let's do it here. Our meat should come from here, unless we simply can't keep up with the supply. But that doesn't seem to be the case when we look at Shad. I want my oil to come from here. I want us to be polluting our own national parks. Maybe that will get us to say, hey, we need to get off of this stuff. But we should be polluting somebody else's national park while we lose all the jobs and give them overseas. And if coal mining and energy is needed, I want it happening here in my country. And if you live in Canada or you live in Australia, you should be saying the same thing. We should be able to take care of ourselves, and nothing like a crisis like this pandemic has pointed out that we're not. This oligarchy, as Shad referenced, of these multinational billionaires like Bill Gates, they don't care about our countries. They don't care about us as people. They'll drive the prices of our products down by moving businesses overseas, and I've had it. We're going to do more and more investigations like this. I mean, no offense to vegans or vegetarians or anything. That is not what this is about. By the way, if you're a vegetarian, you should be really concerned about Bill Gates and his belief in GMO vegetables. Well, speaking of healthy food and health food and vegetables, I like to find a good farm-to-table farmer's market or a store. Well, there's a store in Florida that we're going to talk about, and it happens to bring up my favorite part of every show, or when we do it. It's time for the Highwire Hero of the Week. Our Highwire hero of the week is Alfie Oakes. I love this guy. I don't know if you saw him, but he owns a sort of farm-to-table grocery store. He's been all over the news. This is what that looked like in the news. Take a look at this story.
We all fantasize about a time when we won't have to wear the masks anymore. It's not now. But some at a supermarket in Florida appear to have decided that the time is now.
A Naples grocery store going viral for not requiring masks inside.
This was the scene at Oaks Farm's Seed-to-Table Market in Naples today.
Lines of uncovered faces prompting mostly heavy criticism.
Proof of that seems to be shocking much of the rest of the country, but it is barely raising an eyebrow here.
The sign out front outlines if you have a medical condition that prevents you from wearing a mask, you are exempt, and we cannot legally ask you about your medical condition.
Alfie Oakes is making national headlines for not enforcing mask wearing at his Oaks Farm Seed-to-Table Market.
Customers can wear a full bodysuit, and if you're afraid of bumping your head, then put on a football helmet.
You don't think masks work and that the virus is not a real thing, a hoax?
I know that the masks don't work, and I know that the virus has not killed 400,000 people in this country. That's total hogwash.
His anti-masking practices fueling harsh criticism on social media, but it's also apparently fueling his business, attracting shoppers like this woman.
This is the only grocery store that we support currently.
Well, Alfie Oakes is a man after my own heart, and I am honored to get a moment to speak with Alfie. Alfie, first of all, thank you for being reasonable. Thank you for being great on camera. Thank you for not seeming like a crazy person when you talk about the reality of this is a free country. What made you do it? Like, what inspired you to just say, oh, this is hogwash, I'm done with this?
Well, first of all, it was very thought out, and you know, we've never worn masks here or made anyone wear a mask here ever since the very beginning. And we have about 8,000 to 10,000 people coming through a day. And the decision was made after I actually had a conversation with our Senator Rick Scott early on. I was begging him not to actually get to the president and urge him not to do any shutdowns. That this was, and we both agreed that neither one of us were really doctors or epidemiologists. So he had one of the world's leading epidemiologists get on a three-way call with me back in February last year. And we spent several hours. And after speaking with this gentleman for several hours, and I wish I could have recorded the conversation because he was spot on. First of all, he said that children weren't going to be affected by it, and that really healthy adults with a good immune system wouldn't be. They were just worried about this chance of more of the older population and nursing homes in particular, of it just spreading really very quickly. And I said, well, this is everything that he gave me, and an hour and 45 minutes of information. I listened to mostly, but at the time when I did take that conversation with under the premise that he might change my mind and that I might not come out, you know, I might be a little bit more hesitant. And after I got done with him, I was convinced that I was 100% right, that this is a political pandemic. And a year later, I got 3,200 employees. Not one person's died. Very few people have been sick. The people that did get sick went to a doctor that got hydroxychloroquine and zinc, and they were better within 2 or 3 days. I mean, any person that's ill stays home, but that, you know, going back to something earlier in the show that I listened to, this is the bad thing about some of these graphs. At first, I watched that 0.06 about the children mortality, and I knew that was an insane number because I've done a lot of study on it. And I thought, well, you know what? Maybe a lot of times with those graphs that they miss it up, they miss by 2 numbers, so it would be 0.0006. But that's not even the case. Doing the numbers by the 74 million and 247 kids, it's 0.000034. So the chances are better. The chances are better to hit the Powerball than if you're a kid that dies by COVID. So you know, there's even, I think, behind Bill Gates in a picture I saw, he had this book that was about, you know, lying through statistics, and there was an obvious blatant error there. I'm a numbers guy, but So,
all right, well, let me ask you a question,
Shad,
and we have a video. I believe you had a film crew that was in shooting, and someone came up to you. I want to play this video because it gets to the heart of what we're all facing. Those of us that want to step forward. Take a look at this.
I'm double shotted. I'm totally safe.
I have nothing against masks.
So just tell people to come in wearing their masks.
Come in wearing your mask.
I do. I don't need it because I've got 2 shots. But if other people are scared, I'm wearing it for them.
Well, you're allowed to wear your mask.
Yeah, but everyone thinks that you are against them.
No,
because
no,
of that sign
no,
out there,
I'm not.
Which literally gives permission to people who can wear the mask to walk in here pretending they can't wear the mask. My husband's a doctor, so he's explained it all to me.
Anybody that thinks that I'm against the mask, that's the farthest thing from the truth. Actually,
then take that sign down.
Absolutely not.
Why not?
I would never take that sign down. That sign doesn't say that we're against the mask.
Well,
it
really kind of gives permission
no, it
to
does
people
not.
that sneak in there without it on.
No.
But the law says they have to wear them.
No, the law doesn't say that.
Yeah, it does.
So no, the law doesn't say that, ma'am. With the most respect, I love that you're wearing your mask.
I don't have to.
Okay,
I'm double vaccinated.
Well,
I'm good.
then don't wear it.
I'm doing it because other people get nervous when they see people without them.
Well, that's a sad thing. If you are really afraid of the virus, then come in with a full virus suit like they wear in the virus lab.
Don't make a joke of it.
That's no joke because
you're
a mask does not protect us from the virus.
You know, obviously, you and I look at the same type of data. I've been saying this for years, but I was talking to a friend of mine that had put a post about he saw someone on the subway not wearing a mask, and we got to get in these people's faces. And I said, hey man, then you're telling them to attack me because I don't wear a mask, anywhere I go except for if I have to fly because I don't want to get kicked off the airline. There's nothing I can do there. But what he said to me, I called him and said, what's going on? And he said, look, I think that, in order to make people feel comfortable, my job is to wear a mask. And I thought, really? And that friend is Jewish. And I said, I think that was basically the yellow star thing to make, Germans feel comfortable to know who was who, you had to wear that. Or, in order to make men in, certain societies feel comfortable, women are forced to wear burqas. But how do you look at that? You have a customer sitting there, and how do you, what do you think about this idea that in order to make everybody comfortable, we've got to do what they want to be wearing these masks? How do you respond to that?
Yeah, it's a terrible social experiment that's going on, and the fact that it's become political is insane to me, and it's very common sense for one thing, it's really that I think that the majority of the people wearing the mask are doing it for that reason, because they know the people that come and wear masks all the time from Chicago and New York and all these places and are wearing it all the time, when they come into here, they take it off and they never wear it. So most of the people aren't doing it because they're afraid. And I'm not saying that there's not a lot of people that have bought into the fear, because the media is telling you a million times a day that there's all these people dying. That's obviously they're dying of other issues. The CDC says 94.5% of the people that die from other comorbidities, not really. Not the difference between causation and correlation. So when you get down to the 0.5% that do really die from maybe COVID, it comes down to the regular flu numbers, and it's not a pandemic. So, you can see through that once you start looking at the numbers. But it's a shame because it's become this political thing. I love every person. I have 3,200 employees. Many of them are liberals. And I love everybody. Like, I love every person. Even we got on the main news here when the BLM came, and I called them out. I called the BLM group out for being, basically it's a hoax. If you look into it, they're not to unify our country. They're not set up for that. We know what the reason is. And I told a lot of the employees, I'm like, you're welcome to go out there with the BLM people, and I'm going to love you and respect you. I might think you're misguided, but if you come and do your work, we love all people. And it's the same thing with this mask now, is that I have some of these girls that are liberal that work at our all organic store, and they wear the mask, and they're young and healthy, and I think they're not doing it because they feel threatened by health, but it's almost like you're wearing it pridefully because you support the left party, and that's an allegiance, and that's the really sad thing of how they've been able to manipulate this thing in that way. Because they've sit here and been along the ride where they've watched that none of their fellow employees over here have got sick or ill or anything. Early on, there was a few more people that were maybe been more concerned about it, but now we're a year of data in, and we've, you know, I always say if Fauci really cared about the American people, he'd be coming to our store and saying, okay, for the last year, you have, you know, 90% of the people have not ever been wearing a mask. There's 8,000 people a day coming through the store. Let's see how come these people haven't got ill. Let's see how come no one's died. It's because we are breathing in and out freely. We're getting plenty of sunshine. We're eating healthy, and a lot that I don't know how much time we got, but a lot that Shad Sullivan was saying really inspired me to give you some thoughts on the farming end, on all that. I was actually in that plant.
You know what, Alfie? I'll bring you back on because I do want to sort of stick here, and I think I am fascinated by that. So let's bring you on again and talk about health because it's clear. I've been wondering why is it that Whole Foods is the biggest Nazis in the world when it comes to vaccines and masks and all of this. And I'm like, what happened to organic food? Why are you reading labels? Why are you looking at where your food's coming from, but you don't care about the chemicals that are on the mask that you're breathing, all of these things. But what I really want to ask you before we go is, you know, I talk to friends. Some friends are just like, dude, this is never going to end, man. We're in masks till the end of time. People are too stupid. They're not going to do anything about it. Alfie Oakes is out there all by himself. What do we need to do? I mean, you did it. How do we wake? There's got to be more people like you. Is there something we can do to inspire more restaurants and grocery stores to do what you're doing and create an environment? Look, we'll flood in there. I know we're everywhere. We will flood these, you know, these businesses without our masks on. What can we do to make that happen?
So you got to be bold and stand up. And you know, our country was founded on civil disobedience. That's the facts. And when there's tyrannical rule and laws that make no sense, that are against our constitutional principles, our God-given constitutional principles, we have to stand up. And a lot of people, unfortunately, we're in this apathetic stage that our founding fathers knew we were going to get here, and people just lay down so easy. And I'm not one of those guys. And I mean, I've had hundreds of doctors, literally hundreds and hundreds of doctors come in here and they tell me they know that the mask is all BS. And I'm like, well, will you jump on and do a little quick video with me? Absolutely not. They're afraid of losing their job. So many businesses, and I say that these businesses, and that's why we're doing this initiative on March 1st, bold businesses, business owners for liberty. And we've already got close to 3,000 businesses on board that are going to open. It doesn't matter where you're at. We need to have people have got to come out, because if we wait for the politicians in DC to tell us that it's okay, it's never going to happen. They're enjoying the power. I'd say there's 15 good ones up there. So you got 420 self-serving cowards up there that don't really care about the Constitution or our individual liberties, and they're not going to open things back up for us. We have to take it, upon ourselves. And we've fought. There's a mask mandate in Collier County, but no one's ever going to. I said, you'll bulldoze the building before you ever get us to wear a mask. I was at the county commissioner meeting. I said, I'll wear handcuffs before I ever wear a mask. And I'm not going to do it. And if it was different and it was really where people were dying in massive numbers in reality, not fake numbers on the TV, because we're seeing that it actually worked, then we'd be wearing it. I'd be in my house right now, right? But instead, I'm out hugging and kissing 8,000 people a day, loving everybody and having the best year of my life. Ever since Sam Brock did the hit piece on us, we've done about an extra $1.5 million in sales. So I sent him some flowers a week after Valentine's Day. I didn't want to send him on Valentine's Day. I thought he might get the wrong idea. The guy's a little funny.
You don't want to get him too hot and bothered all in one day.
Yeah. But it's just such a shame. And Shad, said that this is a plan for communism. It's really more of a plan for globalism. You watch Bill Gates come out and he's talking about coming. We should all start eating synthetic beef and we'll get used to the taste. Are you kidding me? So there's a reason behind that. And synthetic beef will be made in a big plant that would be government, controlled by monopolistic companies. And beef cattle, and thank God what they're doing is exactly right. They're putting it in small groups of little small farms. And that's what that needs to happen to save our country. We all need to band together and get out of this big, and we can do it with our pocketbooks. We have the majority of people on our side, and we decided where to spend our money. And if we do it with local businesses, doesn't matter if it's a liberal local business or conservative, we can support this, what they're trying to crush in this country with this pandemic.
Absolutely. Alfie, really quick, if people are in the Florida area, March 1st, tell me about this event. Where's it going to be, or how do we have to go to the internet to figure out? There it is. The lockdown in the U.S. is over, effective March 1st, 2021. How can people get directly involved? What should they do?
So if they have, we have had several lawyers reach out in different states that said they'll do pro bono work, and the businesses that want to be bold, and we encourage them, we give them some different ways. And if they just right now, if they email us at thefreedom@oaksfarms.com, and that's OAKES farms.com. Some people forget the E, but freedom@oaksfarms.com. You email us. If you're a lawyer and you want to help out in your state, because obviously each state needs its own representation, or if you're a business owner that wants to join on board, like I said, we're approaching 3,000 people that have already sent us emails from all the word we're getting out, and it's the first step. I mean, we have to take control of this on our own, or it's never going to happen. And we're going to keep pushing. We're having on the 6th, we're having a freedom rally right here at the store. We're having a lot of people coming over. Some big names here, and the store has turned into a place for patriots. It's a true blessing, and I would love to get back on your show and talk about health, though, because one of the reasons so many of us here have not been afraid of this virus at all, because we keep a healthy immune system, and we grow. We have 3,000 acres of farmland. We bring 100 items in a day that's picked that morning, that's fresh, and it makes a huge difference.
That does make a huge difference. We will have you on again, Alfie. It's great meeting you, and I look forward to having more discussions like this. Obviously, we're of one mind. Our audience, I think, is right there with you, and I think you're going to meet a lot of them when they come to that march on March 1st. So take care, Alfie. Thank you. You're a Highwire Hero of the Week. Keep up the great work. I think you're inspiring millions to step up and be human beings again and truly be Americans, which means rebel against stupid, ridiculous, pointless laws. So take care.
Absolutely. When they're taking our liberties away, we got to stand up. We can't keep kneeling down, or it's going to be too late. And we're approaching that point. And I think there is more people awake than ever. That's what we console ourselves with.
Absolutely. All right. Take care, Alfie. We'll talk to you soon. You can't say it better than that. If we continue to live on our knees, we're running out of time. I think that's clear. Look, there's a lot of waking up that's taking place. We're awake. We're seeing it. The ranchers are awake. We're seeing, empty store shelves. We're seeing all of the things that are working against us. But are you going to sit there and keep wearing your mask? You're going to keep walking around? Are we all going to keep complying to everything? And letting this thing get further and further down the road, a vaccine that doesn't work? Are we going to let Ben Shapiro be out there, tragically uninformed, waiting for a vaccine, not understanding why he can't eat movie popcorn yet, even after he's got his vaccine? You got to share the truth. You got to be a person that someone goes to for the truth. And when you do that, when you don't wear the mask, when you're somebody that's out there, I've seen it so many times. When I'm not wearing my mask, you see other people see you and you watch them pull it down. It's time to pull it down. It's time to stand up, get off our knees. We have got to say enough is enough. We've got to fire Fauci. We got to get new people in there. We need a diverse scientific group in the White House and around the world on every network. We need to be hearing from all sides. There are international, world-renowned scientists from Harvard, from Stanford, from Oxford, literally every great university in the world that is saying these lockdowns are killing more people than they ever saved. And now we know in countries that didn't lock down, they're doing better than us. The countries that couldn't get near a doctor, they're doing better than us. Doctors may really be the problem, and certainly whatever globalist system they're adhering to is a problem. Are you a globalist? Are you just a slave to some group of people you don't know who they are? Is our country really being, run by Joe Biden, or is there someone else behind him? Because I have a hard time imagining Joe Biden writing all 50 of those declarations of, all of the executive orders that he signed. I have a hard time believing he sat down and wrote those, but somebody is. And we're going to keep investigating, figuring out who are those people? Who are the globalists? How many of us consider ourselves globalists? How many of us don't consider ourselves globalists, but are going along with the agenda by wearing our mask? It's time to grow up. It's time to stand up. It's time to step out onto the high wire with those that are bold enough to do it. Don't leave Alfie all alone. Don't leave me all alone. Let's do this. Let's get our lives back. Because whether or not Ben or Megan, you want to get that vaccine, go right ahead. I don't care. But you're right. Enough is enough. We're not wearing masks to 2022. Go ahead and take a useless vaccine. Whatever placebo effect you need to get up and be a human being, go and do that. Take vitamins. I don't care. Just stop adhering to laws that make no sense. We are free. We must stand for freedom now. We're running out of time, folks. So grab all your friends. Next week, next Thursday, make them sit down on the Highwire so that they're not uninformed anymore. We can't have any more Ben Shapiro's and Meghan McCain's out there totally freaking confused. They need to understand the truth. Here's where it's at. You know where to find it. You know where to find us next week on the Highwire. Thanks for watching, and thanks to the Highwire insiders who make this show possible. If you'd like to become a Highwire insider, then go to our website, thehighwire.com, and sign up now. And please, share the show. We're on Instagram, Twitter, BitChute, and now on Roku. Because knowledge is power, censorship is real, and we need all the help we can get.